This is the Erasing Shame podcast, Season 3. Honest talk for healthy living, growing, and thriving.
Welcome to a new episode of Erasing Shame. And on this episode, I'm joined with a new friend, Michelle Yang. Hello, Michelle.
Hi, how are you?
And we happen to be in the same time zone, so it's a little easier to coordinate this conversation. And Michelle has a fascinating story that she will be sharing with us. And she's getting more and more active on social media, and she's ready to share her story. But let's start with your family background a bit.
Yeah.
And then we'll fast forward to our current situation.
Yeah, it's a little complicated, actually, my family story. My friends who've known me for years still get confused. Is she Chinese? Is she Korean? I'm actually ethnic Chinese. I was born in South Korea. And but my parents were also born in Korea. So my grandparents were the ones who immigrated from China. And when I was 9 years old, I immigrated to the U.S. So yeah, that's my family. So I'm Chinese, born in Korea.
And what was it like growing up?
Yeah. So it was, of course, it was really hard when we first immigrated. My dad was a teacher in Korea. My mom was a stay-at-home mom. And when we immigrated to the States, neither of them spoke English. They still don't, 30 years later. And my dad became a cook in Chinese restaurants, and my mom was a girl. And so my little brother and I, my brother is 3 years younger than me, were left alone a lot more, and then they, had a hard time adjusting. We moved across the country because we first went with my aunt who had sponsored our immigration in the East Coast, and then we moved to Nebraska for a while, and then where we did in Arizona, and yeah, so it's isolating. We never lived in a big Asian hub, and it was struggling. It was a struggle for them, and I quickly became the person who spoke the most English in the family, right? So my parents bought a restaurant in Arizona, and I was working in the restaurant from the time I was 12, and I did all their translating for them, negotiating leases with these companies and phone bills, disputes, anything like that. It fell on me. And, of course, on top of, failure is not an option, right? Like, we gave up everything for you and your brother. And so we had to excel in school. And so I was responsible not only for my own grades, but also for my little brother. I had to, it was my job to be in charge of my little brother. And I was working on my nights and weekends at the restaurant. So it was a lot of pressure.
Yeah, there's a lot of similarities of my story, too. I grew up in a small town. My parents ran a restaurant for a few years and then a motel business. And I had to help out as a young teenager. And I was always uncomfortable doing that because I was so young. And I was very self-conscious of being the little kid trying to talk to adults.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as I got to know you through your blog and your timeline, it looks like life was going along pretty good for you. You're a pretty high achiever. You're a musician. You're a blogger now.
Yeah.
So what happened?
So what happened? I think on paper it looks like, and everything is going great. And I think that is what we're trying to spread awareness, right, about how life can seem one way, and we don't really know what struggles are happening underneath. I was always getting great grades. I was, I was pretty well liked, socially. The teachers loved me, but I had insomnia from grade school. I was like, I would describe myself as like deeply, deeply depressed from when I was really young, because my parents, they were still isolated. In Arizona, we didn't have anyone. And not speaking the language, and the work being so all consuming, and I felt like and my dad would say to me over and over that I was the pillar of the family.
Mm.
And he thought this was encouraging. and of course, it was just like so much pressure that I had anxiety and I didn't have the vocabulary for it. I didn't know it was anxiety. I just knew that I was afraid. I just was deeply afraid. And I would tell my parents I was scared. And I was so scared that I couldn't fall asleep.
Mm.
And I mean, even before that, immigration was traumatic for me. I didn't speak English. That was really hard. And as a person who's always been pretty social, I wanted to assimilate as soon as possible, and just I had to be really hard on myself to do that and to learn to speak English without an accent and
Mm. Mm-hmm.
that as quickly as possible. But I remember in those early years that I was crying myself to sleep every night, right? And my parents didn't know, and I don't know why at that early age I felt like I had to hide it from my parents that I was crying, that I never confided in them. Maybe it's just because I knew that they were having a hard time too, and they had given up so much, and they kept saying like, "This is for you." They said America's heaven for kids. Is what they said when we immigrated, and so yeah, I think that's why. So I was deeply depressed early on, and my parents and my teachers even noticed in like fifth and sixth grade. I remember, and and so they would want to talk to my parents for parent-teacher conference, but my parents always insisted on bringing me to the conference, right? And their excuse was that I was going to translate for them.
Right.
And the teachers always chickened out. The teachers never brought it up in front of me. And so they're like, "Oh, everything's fine." And then my parents would just be like, "So why am I here?" But yeah, I was deeply depressed and had a lot of anxiety since like the first sixth grade, and it just got worse from there. Through high school, my parents, confided in me more than they should have because they never sought out mental health. They never sought out therapy or counseling for the marriage, and because they had so much, they wanted to keep private about their private lives, and so they were like, "You can't talk about this with others, but you're one of us, right? So then like be my sounding board. Let me vent to you about your father or about your mother, of course. But I'm the child, like I shouldn't be hearing this stuff about my parents at age 13, right? And but I did. So it was just my, when they fought, they would always say that it's because of us that we fought. And so, of course, like I took on that guilt, and of course, I love my parents. I'm not trying to,
Yeah, that's just a lot of weight to carry.
Yeah.
The emotional weight, the trauma, the parent-child relationship being turned upside down, and that you're having physical manifestation on top of that.
Yeah.
Psychosomatic, to use a fancier word.
Yeah.
And so our shame culture kind of prevents someone from getting the help they need. So when were you able to take that leap of faith and get the help you need to change your story?
So in high school, I started going even longer without sleep. So I was, more stressed out and so depressed. And then I was having mania too, and I was having psychotic episodes, and I was acting erratic. And I remember one time it was finals, and instead of answering the questions, I doodled and drew pictures on it because I was manic, and then I yelled at my best friend in a class in front of everyone with just a bunch of nonsense, basically. And I knew something was wrong, and I begged my parents to take me to see someone, a professional. And my parents' number one concern, they were, no way, because they said, if we take you to a doctor, then it'll be on your permanent record and you won't get into college, right? And that was the primary concern. And they said, and of course it's not true, right? But that was where their mind went, and that was what their priority was. And they were like, oh, if it's on paper, then I'll have that label as mentally ill, and she's like, and your future will be ruined. Like, you'll never get married, you'll never, you never go to, you'll have.
And those are real fears.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And
yeah. So
what is the truth on the paper part? I think health records are private.
Yeah, private. They'll never go to college. So. Yeah, like
okay, there you go.
I won the most prestigious scholarship in my state. Right. But that was after my first episode. But my parents. So my dad, what happened was he finally agreed to take me to see someone. They drove us 8 hours to California to see a family doctor who was the little brother of a good friend of his from childhood in Korea, because they thought, okay, this is a person we can trust. This is a person that will keep it off the records, right? And tell me for real what's up. And I talked to this doctor who was so nice, and he was like young and handsome, and I'm like, wow. I was really hoping that he would be my answer. Like, this will be the turning point. They will help me. And I bared my soul. I told them everything. Like, I thought the radio was talking directly at me, and dating myself. Like, Romeo and Michelle's High School Reunion was a popular movie at the time, and I was like, that movie was about me. And I had all these things that was completely untrue. That and talked about depression and how I wasn't sleeping, everything. Yeah, and it was so secretive. Like, they waited until the clinic closed and everybody left, and then I went and talked to him after hours, as if we were doing a drug deal or something. But it's I'm just a kid asking for help. And so after I told him all this, he called my dad back into the room, and I'm just holding my breath. Like, this is the moment. Like, am I going to know what's happening to me? Why this is happening? And what he tells my dad is, oh, your daughter's fine. She's a great kid. She's just has an overactive imagination. And I was just crushed, right? Just completely crushed, because I was like, this was going to be my lifeline. And just invalidated everything that I've been feeling for years, that all the torment that I had gone through for years. And of course, he didn't mean harm by it, but I just don't of course, but I do, if I'm honest, a little frustrated, right? That was pretty irresponsible. If I could have gotten help that much earlier, it would have been better, So yeah, that was my sophomore or junior year, probably more junior year in high school. And when I finally did end up getting help was I got my scholarship. And the reason why I worked so hard towards my scholarship was I even my 8th grade English teacher had us write letters to our senior years, and what you wanted to accomplish. And I wrote that I wanted to earn a full ride scholarship to college so that I could choose what I wanted to study, because my parents said doctor or lawyer, those are your options, right? and I knew I wanted more than those two options. And so I got the scholarship, and so when I went to school a few hours away, that was the first time I was able to take my mental health, my treatment into my own hands, right? And so I went to see a therapist for real for the first time. And because I'm so high performing, I was part of such a prestigious scholarship program within the campus, they just wanted to dismiss it as just kind of normal angst as well. So they gave me some anxiety medicine, some or something, without giving me a diagnosis, even though I had described episodes. And it wasn't until I went to study abroad in China that I had a full-on manic episode. And then, because I was living in the dorm, part of a small program made up of people from all over the country, that there was no hiding it. Michelle was full on psychotic and having a psychotic episode, and my dad had to fly out to bring me back home, and then I was hospitalized, and that's when I was finally diagnosed with bipolar. I mean, at first the doctor, people have this misconception that like bipolar is the trendy diagnosis nowadays, right? That like
people joke about it, yes.
You're bipolar, it's like the hip thing, and like people just have this mistrust of it, but like that is not my experience at all. Like you have to, they rule out everything else before they'll give you the bipolar diagnosis. Like, so at first my psychiatrist thought I had like massive depression, and so he prescribed antidepressants, which led me to mania, and that's when I got the bipolar disorder diagnosis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how many years has that been?
Oh, that was 2001.
Okay, so 18 years.
Almost, yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like my timeline.
Yeah.
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 And so how are you doing now?
I'm doing great. That's why I'm coming out, because I feel like I want to talk to myself when I was 20 and terrified. And, my parents just wanted to hide it. They were constantly trying to talk me out of taking my medicine, even though I knew that I needed it. And I just, coming back, it was summer after my freshman year in college was when this happened. And I had to take a break from college. And here I was, like, top 20 students in the state of Arizona. And my whole future was so bright. And all of a sudden, everything came crashing down, like being like crashing to a screeching halt. Like, am I going to finish college? Does this mean I'm going to drop out? Does this mean I'll never go to grad school? Like, I'll never be able to hold down a job. I will never get married, like let alone have a child. But, now, almost 20 years later, it's never been easy along the way, but I've done all those things. I've had a nonprofit career, a private sector career. I have my master's. I have a beautiful family. I'm really happy, and I never thought all these would be possible. And I see the young people struggling. So not only do I want to go back and I wish I could talk to myself again when I was 20, but since I can't do that, I would love to encourage others who are in my same situation. Because I don't want it to be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because if they think I'm just doomed, and then why do I even try?
Yeah. So you've been able to work through it. There is hope that our worst fears are just our imagination, mostly, because when it comes to fears, like 98% of our fears never come true.
Yeah, of course, but not while in denial. This is not something you can just it should be taken seriously, right? Mental health, mental illness should be taken. You need treatment, you need support, take your medicine, you should treat it as any other life-threatening, potentially life-threatening condition, right? Like you wouldn't just say, oh, I have cancer, but I'm going to ignore it and it'll be fine. With a positive attitude, cancer will go away. That is not going to happen. Same with, diabetes. So we should think about mental illness the same way we think about serious physical illnesses.
Well, let's compare notes a little bit, because I've had to manage my own mental health, and I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder 18 years ago too. And it's at times it's been really hard work.
Yeah.
And I've having part of my self-care was learning about this disorder and how to manage it based on what other people did and what were some of the common things. But in the end, I came to the conclusion that's like a customized, personalized disease. So you have to figure out what is the best self-care for you.
Right.
And part of that is the hard work. And then the other part of hard work is doing the hard work of the self-care that you have to maintain. So for me, I have to maintain my sleep on a regular schedule. I eat things I enjoy. I actually went on a small diet, but not a crazy diet because that just frustrated me.
Yeah.
And then I need people around me, and I have support relationally as well spiritually, because when I was struggling, I could use all the help I could get. So anything that could help, I wanted to get help. And having a stable job instead of being a consultant was helpful to me. And I still stay on my medication, and I see my therapist every week.
Yeah.
What does it look like for you?
Yeah, I very similar. Sleep is so important. Medication, of course, and yeah, going to your doctors as on a regular basis. I also find routine and structure really important to my day. So that's why I have traditionally really liked having a job that I go to, which there's built-in people for you to talk to, built-in for you to be social, a reason for you to a purpose, right? It gives you a purpose. I feed off of feeling productive, and so at work you of course feel very productive, and so all of that. I totally relate to you about the eating, about the diet, because it's like eating healthy, of course, is definitely part of it, but also I find myself, I can't fixate too much on a too strict of a diet. It's too much in my head. So I kind of have to walk that line. And I try to go outside at least once every day, on weekends as well. Like I think having a dog really helps with that, because, but yeah, I feel like if I'm home all day, I'll like naturally start to feel down. And just even simple things like turning on lights. I like to keep my house really bright, because it tricks your mind, into it. Like I don't, especially where I live is in the Pacific Northwest, kind of can be dreary a lot of times of the year, and so just keeping the lights on really helps me. And then just being more aware, like I became aware just in recent years that sounds like the kitchen fan or the bathroom fan, or when there's a sports game on TV, that like people yelling, yelling at each other, talking noise, it puts me on edge. Like I'm on anxiety, and so it's like I go turn off those things as much as I can. And if somebody needs to watch the game, I'm like, do you mind watching it on mute, or I'll go somewhere else, just being aware of what triggers you is all very important. And yeah, nurturing your friendships and your relationships. I know that, when you're feeling more down or feeling stressed, it's easy to kind of isolate yourself. But, when you have, you get out what you put into relationships, right? And so, I just absolutely believe how important it is to invest in others, so that when you do need ask somebody to lend a hand, that they'll be there for you too.
Yeah, that's great. Anything else you would say to our younger listeners? We're really using this kind of a social media platform through a podcast and YouTube and Facebook to really reach the person who's struggling and feels like they're alone, and no one understands them, and they don't know how to take the step out.
You're not alone. That's it. You're not alone. It's gonna be okay. Things are gonna get better. Get help. I feel like coming from an immigrant family, minority background, I think it's harder for us because there's an extra barrier you have to cross to get that help that you need. But stick with it, and it makes it really hard because it often can be the first big departure from your family, that you have to go against your family first to be like, no, this is real. I really need help for this for myself. I'm not just being dramatic and making this up in my head, for attention. Like I need help. And that's a big stand to me to take. So, it takes a lot of courage. And I just want people to know that it's worth it, because it's your life. You can still go after your dreams.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And then you've made a big decision in your own life as you're transitioning to a different stage of your work and career and life. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah.
Your new project you're working on?
Yeah, I am working on a book right now. I think, Asian Americans are 3 times less likely than other people in the country, to seek mental health, um, seek mental health treatment. And, when I was little, so the thing that really saved me was my parents' restaurant happened to be in the same shopping center as the library, the public library.
Oh.
And that changed my life. It was my escape, it was my refuge. And I know that books can get to places that, when people are having a hard time seeking help, a book can be that. A book can take people places. So I'm working on a book to share my story, to offer courage to others. So yeah, that's my latest project. And it's really scary and really, really exciting, and I'm putting all my energy towards it at the moment.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And for our viewers and listeners that want to follow along your journey of book writing and blogging, how can they get in touch with you?
My blog is livingwellhappily.com. And I talk about my bipolar disorder there. And then you can follow me at Michelle Yang Writer. That's writer WRITER at Facebook or Instagram. And then I have a Twitter that's Michelle H Yang.
Very good. So we'll add a link to all of those in the show notes, and we will be, or at least I will be following your book writing journey and look forward to how you will tell your story and help many others. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Okay, thank you so much for what you're doing, DJ.
Great. Thank you for sharing your story. And this concludes this episode of Erasing Shame. Thank you for watching and listening, and stay in touch with us through social media, subscribe, you know what to do. Everything's at erasingshame.com. Until next week, stay tuned and stay well. Bye-bye.
Thank you for being a part of Erasing Shame. Please rate and review on iTunes, subscribe on YouTube, and like on Facebook. Share with your friends and followers. Together, we are erasing shame one story at a time. Get all the details at erasingshame.com.